Gangstalking Explained. Introduction. Gangstalking, also known variously as community stalking, mass stalking, proxy stalking, cause stalking, coordinated stalking, organized stalking, and community harassment, is the act of large surveillance teams continuously tracking, stalking, and surveilling targets on a watch list. The person being stalked is most likely to refer to themselves as a targeted individual. The tracking is done primarily via picking up the target's mobile phone location using cell site simulators, referred to most commonly colloquially as Stingray. The stalking is done primarily by each member of the surveillance team taking it in turns to stalk the target whilst doing role play or street theatery, trying to blend into the environment. The surveillance is then done via covert cameras which take imagery of the target as they go about their daily business, which is then transmitted via 5G back to a control center. Considering the bizarre nature of gangstalking and the amount of people involved, it is often not believed when people first hear about it. People will often believe instead that the target must be suffering from paranoia or delusion, when they describe what is happening to them. The purpose is to gather information about the target and potentially to gather evidence of wrongdoing, i.e. to build a case against them, though the specific reason why someone is placed on a watch list is never explained or justified. Even though attempts are made to make it covert, the target will likely realize quite quickly that they are being followed based on the cumulative effect, and statistical impossibility, of lots of smaller and bizarre things happening all along their journey. This realization will be followed by a confusion phase as the target tries to understand the who, what, why, how and when of the stalking. They will eventually learn to adapt, form coping mechanisms, to the stalking, such as not going outdoors, leaving their phone at home, developing a safe space, etc. They may also attempt to stop the stalking by contacting the police, likely to result in a referral to mental health services, moving house, which doesn't work, or leaving the country, which is oftentimes the only thing which is successful. The target may also participate in social media, either as a content creator or consumer, which can act as a support network. They will also likely describe intense and chronic stress and being at permanent breaking point, as there are so many problems and unanswered questions introduced into the target's life by the stalking. In the most extreme cases, gangstalking has been associated with extreme forms of retaliatory violence such as mass shootings, murders and attempted murders. Even though governments admit to having surveillance teams, watch lists and people of interest that are under continuous 24/7 surveillance, they do not admit to gangstalking. In addition to the continuous surveillance, a significant proportion of targets report other investigatory techniques used against them, and/or use of experimental military technology. It is a violation of the human right to liberty, freedom from torture, which includes psychological torture, and privacy, as well as other laws, though these laws remain untested. Part of the problem with mounting a legal challenge is the difficulty in proving who is stalking them, including the lack of access to number plate databases. The term gangstalking is also increasingly being used on social media to refer to things such as workplace mobbing, family issues, or people just being nosy about other people's lives. Background. The government has for a long time followed and investigated suspects such as drug dealers, terrorists, and known criminals, although the stalking was resource intensive and relatively expensive. Gangstalking is also believed by many to be a purposeful form of directed aggression towards people whom the government considers unsavory. It is therefore oftentimes considered a modern-day version of historical surveillance, discrediting and psychological torture/warfare programs. The most notable of these are COINTELPRO, MKUltra and Zersetzung. New technologies such as the ability to track people using fake cell towers has enabled the automation of detecting when someone is on the move. Combined with mapping systems and sat-nav technology, it has enabled much more efficient stalking of individuals. Now a lot of people who would not previously have been followed, including people with no criminal history whatsoever, are being placed on watch lists for years and even decades. This is a global phenomenon and it appears to be happening in countries all over the world. Tracking. Primary tracking via the mobile phone. Targets are tracked primarily by tracking their mobile phone location using fake cell towers, most commonly referred to colloquially as Stingray. This tracking beacon will be passed on to the surveillance teams, who will have the location plotted on a mapping system on a custom-made surveillance team app. Using this tracking beacon, the surveillance team can efficiently stalk the individual by automatically detecting when they are on the move, getting sat-nav directions directly to the target, and determining when they are near one of their starred locations, so they can be at a location before the target gets there. Secondary tracking using motion detection technology and manual updates. If the target realizes they are being tracked by the government on their mobile phone and leaves it at home, soon after, a motion detector will be installed in the street lamp outside their house. This will detect when the target is on the move automatically and will then notify the surveillance team. The surveillance team will then rush in with 3 or 4 people and start stalking them. Any one member of the surveillance team that spots the target will then manually update the target's position on a mapping system so that the rest of the surveillance team know exactly where they are. Street lamps are ubiquitous and afford a power source, lighting source, protection from the elements, and the installation can be covert, as it's made to look like regular maintenance of the light bulb. The motion detection technology is also cheap. Other forms of tracking exist, such GPS trackers and automatic number plate/license plate recognition, ANPR/ALPR, and other forms motion detectors, such as in the front and back of unmanned parked cars. Fundamental significance of automated tracking. This automation of tracking people has been fundamental to the evolution of individual investigators into surveillance teams, as they do not have to wait around manually detecting when someone is on the move. Previously, manual tracking by individual investigators. Previously, individual investigators would wait around and manually detect when an individual was on the move. That individual would be followed by a single car. Now, due to automation of detection when someone is on the move, the individual investigators are free to roam about permanently. When one target on the watch list goes on the move, they will line that route of that individual. Other technological factors contributing to gangstalking. Many other technologies have contributed to the evolution of gangstalking, such as apps, mapping systems, camera technology, and increased bandwidth with 5 grams, which allows potentially for the live streaming of people in HD. This technology means it's cheaper and more efficient than ever to track, stalk, and surveil people. Whereas before it was drug dealers, terrorists, and hardened criminals being followed. Now, as it's become so much cheaper and more efficient, people with no criminal history whatsoever are being placed on watch lists in a blasé fashion. Stalking. Serial versus parallel stalking. The term gang in gangstalking evokes an image of a street gang all following someone in parallel, when in fact the gang is a large surveillance team who follow the target mostly in serial, taking it in turns to stalk them along their route, with a frequency of perhaps on average 1 new stalker per street. Surveillance teams will consist of at least 50 people in, for example, a city. The members of the team will take it in turns to stalk a target that is on the move street by street or location by location. This stalking will be done mainly in serial, i.e. they will line the target's route in a pass-the-baton fashion, though it can oftentimes be in parallel, i.e. multiple members of the surveillance team are surrounding the target at any one time. The guise of the surveillance teams. In order to attempt to make the stalking covert, the members of the surveillance team will be branded as regular members of the community, such as taxi drivers, delivery drivers, milk floats, in the early morning, motorbikes without plates, joggers, cyclists, dog walkers, etc., and will try to blend into the rest of the community. The vehicles used are real company vehicles, such as taxis, that the company running the surveillance team will be paying the local company to use. Any type of vehicle or person that would be out and about traveling all over the place is a candidate for the disguising of the surveillance team members. This disguising allows the members of the surveillance teams to hide in plain sight. Any type of person or vehicle which would have a reason to be out and about driving all over the place will be a candidate. The members of the surveillance teams are mostly adults, but may also include young people, i.e. child spies. The fact that they are made to look like regular members of the community is why it is sometimes referred to as community stalking or community harassment. They never have a real purpose for being near the target, only a fake one. Surveillance role play, street theater. When trying to blend in, they will often act in order to appear convincing. A fake taxi, for example, will pretend to have passengers in the back of the taxi, when they are actually also members of the surveillance team. A fake taxi will also drop passengers off and pick them up in order to try to create the illusion of being real. Another person might be standing in the middle of the road with a phone to their ear, pretending to be on the phone. Another person may be near the target with the car bonnet flipped, pretending to fix their vehicle. The target notices the unlikely nature of this often very bad acting and how their world has suddenly changed from how it used to be, in terms of traffic flow and unlikely and strange things happening all along their journey, and most commonly refers to this continuous acting all along their route as street theater. Rotation of the surveillance teams around the country. It's likely that someone being stalked will attempt to track the number plates of the cars stalking them. In order to prevent this, the surveillance teams are rotated around the country, so that on each day there is a new surveillance team operating in a particular area. If the target attempts to track the number plates, therefore, it will be practically impossible. The effect of this rotation is that, over time, the individual will have literally thousands of stalkers going through the middle of their life. Color coordination and hand signals. Members of the surveillance team will sometimes color coordinate themselves, such as having mostly red or white vehicles, or all wearing items of red clothing. They will also use very subtle hand signal gestures to communicate with other members of the team, for example, indicating the target's position. Hand signals are a common form of communication in many industries, in everything from police and military to sport referees to crane operators. As they are subtle, these hand signals may only be visible when recording the members of the surveillance team with a camera with optical zoom. CCTV cameras used as an adjunct. There are not enough CCTV cameras to follow an individual 24/7, but they are linked in with a mobile surveillance system and are used as an adjunct. If the target on the watch list manages somehow to evade surveillance, they will be picked up again where CCTV cameras are located. Surveilling. The purpose of the gangstalking is to continuously surveil the target as they go about their daily business. This is achieved via covert cameras in, for example, the front and back lights of the surveillance vehicles, covert body-worn covert cameras, and also smartphones pointed in the direction of the target. These cameras are HD and via 5G can transmit a live stream of the illuminated target back to a control center. The purpose of the stalking is to continuously surveil the target. Illumination of the target, brighting. As cameras are not as good as the human eye at picking up low-light images, the targets are usually illuminated by various forms of light sources, vehicle headlights, flashlights, body-worn headlamps, etc. The target will, particularly at night, and even during the day, notice they are being brighted continuously. Sometimes members of the surveillance team will use existing lighting in the environment to illuminate the target, such as jogging past the target as they walk under a street lamp. These lights are usually extremely bright and significantly brighter than, for example, an average set of headlights. Maneuvers. Vehicles stalking individuals. To capture an image of the target, a vehicle needs merely to be pointing towards or away from the target. In addition to cars driving continuously slowly past them, the individual will be forced to walk past headlights from a car which pulls up in front of them, or is waiting in a side street, will have cars doing U-turns near them, and will have cars waiting on the periphery of the target's vision to see which street they turn down next. The cars may park away from the target, so they are recorded with the rear cameras. A common experience is no one being outside, then as soon as a target leaves their house 3 or 4 people and or vehicles will appear in close proximity to the target within 30 seconds to 1 minute. The target will also regularly experience trails of 3 to 4 cars driving past them and sprawling off to different roads to cover different exit points. The target will also notice that everywhere they go there are idling cars with idle people in them. Individuals stalking individuals. Individuals will experience other individuals physically stalking them and loitering near them with no purpose, only a fake purpose. One of the strangest forms of stalking is when walking in the very early hours of the morning. These stalkers can sometimes pretend to live in a house near to where the target is walking, walk into the driveway of this house, fiddle with their keys as they are fumbling about, then when they think the target is out of sight, simply leaving that driveway about 30 seconds to 1 minute later. They may also deliver a leaflet as role play, but only to that one house. In order to get a good image of the target, the surveillance team member will often bright the target. This can be with a torch, headlamp, on a bicycle or scooter with a very bright light on the front, or it can be by using existing lighting in the environment, such as jogging past the target under a street lamp. They may also utilize their smartphone camera by pretending to be on the phone and recording the target through the cameras, or pretending to use their smartphone for something else, then subtly tilting the camera in the direction of the target to take a picture. Vehicles stalking vehicles. Vehicles may be stalked by pulling out in front of the target's vehicle, so that they can be recorded using the rear cameras. If the target goes on a journey, a subset of the surveillance team will split off and form a smaller team to follow them. This may be noticed, and described, by the target as being continuously surrounded on a motorway by the same group of cars. The Surveillance Team App. Surveillance teams have custom-made apps, which are fundamental to the tracking, stalking, and surveillance. What follows is a depiction and description of what the surveillance team apps will look like and how they will function. The homepage of the app contains profiles for each target, a list of nearby targets, a messaging system for the surveillance team members to communicate with each other, and live camera feeds of, for example, the front and back camera on the surveillance vehicle. If the user selects nearby targets, it brings up a list, ordered by proximity. If the user clicks one of the targets, they are presented with a map of the target's exact location, commonly frequented locations, so the surveillance team member can be there before the target gets there, and various options include getting sat-nav directions straight to the target. The app can also detect automatically when the target is on the move, using the tracking beacon. It can also have a feature whereby, if the target leaves their phone at home, the target's position can be updated manually. All it takes is for one member of the surveillance team to spot the target, and they can then update the target's position on the map so everyone in the team knows where they are. One of the buttons is Accept Job. If this button is clicked, the surveillance team member will be expected to travel close to the target and surveil them using the covert cameras, the footage of which will be transmitted back to a control center using 5 grams. Once the user finishes the surveilling, they will end the current job, and find a new target to stalk. Surveillance Team Tactics. Surveillance teams will often have trails of 3 to 4 cars which sprawl off to cover different exit points that the target may take. Other tactics include: if the target leaves the local area, a subset of the surveillance team will split off from the main team in order to continue to track the target. This may be described by a target as being, for instance, surrounded on a motorway by vehicles. If the target goes to a large area, cemetery, forest, etc., they will form a boundary line of spotters on main roads around the area that the target is in and wait for the target to cross that boundary line so they can start being stalked again when they leave that area. If the target takes a regular route and seems to disappear each day at the same location, this could be if they nip down an alleyway each day when a surveillance car is out of sight. More and more role players will be placed at that location each day, up to dozens at the same time, until they figure out which route the target is taking. Response in the target. The effect on the target's life is devastating. The duration of being surveilled is often exceedingly long, being years, decades, or, even, if the parents are under continuous surveillance, from birth. Realization. Numerous steps are taken to make the surveillance covert: branding of the members of the surveillance team, surveillance role play, rotation of the teams, etc. Even so, the target will likely quite quickly realize they are being followed. This is due to the cumulative effect of lots of smaller things happening to them all along their journey, which will give them a sense that something is not right. As an analogy, when someone is communicating, the message they are conveying may be based on the cumulative effect of lots of things such as the words they use, their body language, their facial expressions, the amplitude and intonation of their voice, etc. It's the cumulative effect of all of these things that allows someone to understand their message. In the same way, It's the cumulative effect of lots of smaller things that can contribute to the target being able to almost instantaneously approximate who are real people and who are surveillance team members. Parked cars will switch on their headlights just before the target walks past. Other cars will be going in and out of streets near the target as though they are lost, and/or making ostensible driving mistakes, in order that they can surveil the target. Cars will be pulling up on the curb near the target. Other cars will be doing U-turns near the target. Everywhere they go, there will be vehicles idling with idle people in them and headlights on. They will drive slowly past the target. On every street the target goes on, even on back streets, there will be someone with some kind of very bright light ready to flash it toward the target. Other cars will pull up on the periphery of the target's vision with no purpose, idling with the headlights on. None of these people will be acting normally. There is higher traffic flow than normal on every street and particularly around the target. There will be people waiting to see which street the target goes down next. There will also be idle cars switching on headlights just before the target walks by, waiting on the target's street with headlights on just before the target leaves their house, if they have detected they are about to go on the move, turning into and driving slowly past the target when they get back to their house, vehicles pulling up in the same park that the target is in. There will also be a lack of genuine emotion/behavior in people. Normal, genuine behavior might be getting home from work, slamming the door due to being stressed and going into one's house, a kid cycling down the road singing to themselves without a care in the world, a car listening to loud music driving fast past the target without any care about the target whatsoever, two acquaintances meeting in the street and their faces lighting up with genuine emotion. The people doing surveillance do not emote whatsoever, and in their attempts to appear normal, actually tend to appear like zombies. They also rarely show any eye contact or genuine facial expressions. Even though the surveillance team will try to vary the types of surveillance techniques on the target, the same patterns and techniques will be used again and again, it will still be obvious to the target as all of a sudden their world has changed. If the target is out and about every day, within a week they will know they are under some form of surveillance. The confusion phase and intense and chronic stress. Once the target knows they are under surveillance, they will become very confused about what is happening to them. The specific reason why they are placed on a watch list is never explained or justified. The target may seriously consider that they are in danger of being kidnapped or assassinated, considering the amount of resources being devoted to stalking them. They will also wonder if they should go to the police or if this will make it worse due to most people reporting that they will try to refer the target to mental health services, rather than admit to gangstalking. They will also wonder if they should attempt to explain it/prove it to the people around them, or if they will then just be accused of paranoia or delusion. They may also wonder if they should mount a legal challenge, and if so how they might go collecting the evidence necessary. In addition, the target will wonder why does the probability that someone is doing something wrong not diminish over time? Also, why, if they have tracking information, do they need to stalk that individual permanently? Initially, they will not be believed by people close to them and so the target will lack support from people close to them. These people are likely, instead, to believe that, due to the unlikely nature of being stalked so intensively by so many people, and the perceived strange and erratic behavior of the individual, that they may be suffering from paranoia or delusion, and may also think they are arrogant to think that so much resources would be dedicated towards stalking them. They may say things to the target such as, "I hope you get the help you need." This lack of support may add to the stress. Adaptation, coping mechanisms. Once the target has accepted that they are on a watch list and have a basic understanding of it, they will likely develop coping mechanisms to limit the harm of being stalked. Basic coping mechanisms. These will include staying indoors, so as to limit the stalking. In general, the target is likely to become socially withdrawn. The target may describe the surveillance team as having stolen the best of me. Wearing headphones when outside, so as to try to block out what is happening, developing a safe space where they can spend time without being stalked, such as in a garden or workplace, leaving one's phone at home, to make it more difficult to be tracked, otherwise they will always know exactly where the target is, then going to a large area, particularly at night, such as a cemetery or forest, which is likely to provide some much-needed short-term relief from the stalking. Attempts to be taken off the watch list. The target will contend with how to end the stalking. If they try to wait it out, this is unlikely to work, as people report being stalked for years, decades even. If they go to the police, they are likely to be referred to mental health services, rather than the police admitting to the existence of gangstalking. If they try to eradicate it by moving to a different location within the same country, it is highly likely to start up again soon after moving, as these programs seem to be nationwide. If they contact other government departments, they may face a wall of bureaucracy, and those government departments are unlikely to understand the stalking. If they try to convey to the surveillance team that they know they are being stalked in an attempt to get them to stop the stalking, it is highly unlikely to work, as the company doing the stalking on behalf of the government will be profiting from the stalking and will not want to give up that profit. If they try to mount a legal challenge, they will likely have trouble collecting the evidence necessary, particularly as they do not have access to number plate databases, so cannot prove the identity and nature of employment of the individuals stalking them. The only thing that is reported to have a reasonable chance of success is to leave the country. Other effects on the target. In addition to the chronic stress induced by all of the questions and the effective restrictions on their liberty, the target will likely feel powerlessness due to a huge power imbalance. The police, military, large government departments, global companies, doing the stalking on behalf of the government departments and supplying literally thousands of stalkers, local companies, being paid to supply real vehicles so that they can hide in plain sight, mainstream media and local media all working together against the target. Self-doubt: have I actually done something wrong? Lack of trust: are the people close to me real, or are they covert human information sources employed by the government? Loss of faith in respect in authority, as it's not being regulated properly and the system is highly fallible. The people in government suffer from double standards, as they wouldn't want it happening to them, but it's okay to do it to other people. They are dishonest about lack of resources in these government departments. They also let people be diagnosed with false mental health diagnoses when they know it is real. The entire form of surveillance is unreasonable. Annoyance at not being able to carry their smartphone around with them. Fear of further punishment should they speak out about it. Disappointment at the lack of care for the physical and mental health of the target, in particular the emotional well-being, and also people close to the target who may be indirectly affected. Disbelief at the fact that stalking is meant to be a serious crime, yet the government can do it ad infinitum and that's okay. Feeling of not living in a human society. Automation bots, zombies, surveillance team members, large companies, none of which have human emotion or act and can be interfaced with like human beings. Constantly having to separate truth from fakery, very stressful. One of the reasons why going into nature feels so relaxing, as everything from the sky, stars, moon, trees and stream are all real. The part of the brain which separates truth from fakery, constantly being activated when being gangstalked, can switch off, and the brain can finally relax. The target may also suffer financial losses and hardship. In addition, they may also find it difficult to plan for the future, i.e., if I move, will the stalking stop? If I have children, will they be gangstalked from birth? Etc. Role of social media. Mainstream media versus social media portrayal of watch lists. The mainstream media, when discussing watch lists, are likely to portray them as being covert, and as having dangerous people, such as terrorists and criminals, on the watch lists. A different side of the story is being told by people on social media, where the stalking and surveilling is not covert but overt, and where the people being stalked are simply regular people, clearly not dangerous criminals. A lot of people on these watch lists have no criminal history whatsoever and are placed on watch lists and stalked for years, even decades. Things commonly pointed out by people being stalked on social media. These are the most common things pointed out on social media by people being gangstalked. Brighting everywhere the target goes, they are being brighted, illuminated, in order for the surveillance team to get a good image of them. It's common for a car idling with usually very bright headlights on facing the target. One-headlighted vehicles. Surveillance vehicles are often equipped with toggle switches to switch each headlight on and off. The idea is that the car can be made to look like a different one at night. However, this backfires as the target notices a much higher frequency of these one-headlighters along their journey. Color coordination. The surveillance teams will sometimes color coordinate, for example having all red or white cars, or wearing red items of clothing. Hand signals. Hand signals are used for communication in many industries, from police and military to sports referees. Surveillance teams will use very subtle hand signals to communicate with each other, such as to indicate the position of the target. These hand signals may only be visible when recording the members of the surveillance team with a camera with optical zoom. The same types of vehicles around them, for example delivery vehicles or taxis from the same company, motorbikes with L plates etc. Someone always being near them despite lots of other places an individual could be in the area. Synchronization with the target. The target can look outside their house and see no one about. As soon as they leave their house, 3 or 4 cars will appear, within 30 seconds to a minute, near the target. The target can be in a park and see no traffic flow around it. As soon as the target ventures onto the road they will experience numerous cars synchronizing with them, driving at the same time near time. They will experience cars turning onto the same road the target is on, even when there may be over a dozen other parallel streets available. This becomes highly predictable. The people around them not being local, they will have license plates from another part of the country, and if the target trusts to speak to them they will not have a local accent. Trails of vehicles which sprawl off to different exit points to cover potential exits of the target. Street theater, such as people pretending to be fixing a vehicle near them. Same time entry/exit, i.e. members of the surveillance team arriving at a particular location at the same time as the target, then leaving very shortly after the target leaves that location. Subtly taking pictures of the target with their phone. Continuous traffic around them even on back streets. Synchronization of traffic with them, i.e. they are in a park area and there are no vehicles on the road next to it. As soon as the target ventures onto the road, 3 or 4 cars will suddenly start driving near the target, i.e. they will synchronize with the target. Another example would be the target walking down one of many parallel streets and a surveillance vehicle will turn the same street the target is on, when there are many, even dozens of parallel streets available. A lack of purpose in the people around them, they only ever have a fake purpose for being near the target, not a real one. Components other than surveillance. Stalking and surveilling is the mainstay of gangstalking, however a significant proportion of people also report additional effects. These include investigatory tactics, such as fake relationships, termed covert human information sources in the UK, cameras in the house, termed intrusive surveillance in the UK, interception of communication. Although it may seem highly unlikely, many people also claim to experience things such as experimentation with military technology, such as harassment with energy weapons, audio spotlight or voice-to-skull technology, refit implants. In addition, some people report experiencing directed conversation, members of the surveillance teams having conversations close to the target about private details of the target's life which they couldn't possibly know unless they had access to private information about that person. OT effects include noise harassment and home break-ins. Another effect on the target may be health effects from night vision goggles which the surveillance team members may use. These will contain a powerful infrared torch. If this is focused on the target for an extended period, it may be able to impart serious health effects such as eye problems and also heating of the skin. Lack of proper regulation, watching the watchers. There is a lack of proper regulation of watch lists, no one watching the watchers. No time limit. The duration of being surveilled is often exceedingly, disproportionately and unnecessarily long, being years, decades or even, if the parents are under continuous surveillance, from birth. No judicial oversight. To prevent corruption. No algorithm accountability. For algorithms and/or predictive policing that result in people being placed on watch lists. No proportionality. Hardened criminal get 18 months surveillance, a terrorist 24 months, yet someone who has no criminal history whatsoever can get left on the watch list for years. No ability to challenge the reasons. No diminishing probability. No formal standards. No adherence to policing principles, such as challenging the target, opening up a dialogue. No removal mechanism. No science into the health effects. The physical and mental health effects of being stalked, particularly emotional well-being. No science into mass shootings. The link with mass shootings, murders and attempted murders, and the potential for danger within the society of stalking large amounts of people. It's quite possible that placing potentially dangerous people on watch lists, considering this induces intense and chronic stress, could increase the prevalence of dangerous acts, rather than decrease them. No intensity limits. I.e., there could be dozens of people all surrounding and stalking an individual at any one time. No human rights adherence. Liberty, freedom from torture, privacy. Little law adherence. Part of the problem is that most of the people running the watch lists have never been on a watch list themselves, so have no idea of the devastating effects it has on the targeted individual's life. The law. Gangstalking constitutes far more than just surveillance, and it has devastating effects on the lives of the people being stalked. Human rights laws are designed to guarantee a basic standard of living in most countries. Of particular interest are the human right to liberty. Liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life and behavior. The human right to be free from torture. This includes psychological torture. Gangstalking is often described as a form of psychological torture. The human right to respect one's private and family life. Considering the high degree of people being gangstalked not leaving their own home and or adapting their life significantly due to the distress caused, and also the fact that gangstalking is universally described as torturous, these human rights are being contravened. The people doing the surveillance seem to have no regard for these laws. One of the main challenges is how the individual being stalked proves what is happening to them in a court of law. They do not have access to number plate databases, so they cannot prove, for example, that the cars following them and surrounding them are not local and or that they are owned by people who work for the same company. They are also up against so many forces in the government, police, military, other big government departments, global companies, local companies and the mainstream and local media. It is difficult for someone to put themselves up against such power, and will deplete the individual's resources, such as time, money etc. It's also very hypocritical when the government takes stalking so seriously when an individual does it with potentially up to 10 years in prison, yet when they do it continuously for years, it's considered okay. Link with mass shootings and murders. Gangstalking has been linked with an ever-increasing number of retaliatory mass shootings and attempted murders, some of the most notable examples being Myron May, Aaron Alexis, Everton Brown, and Gavin Long. Other uses of the term. Other organizations which are reported to gangstalk people include Scientologists, Freemasons, and private companies which can be paid solely to harass someone, and harassment from the company that someone works for or used to work for. The term gangstalking is also increasingly being used on social media to refer to things such as workplace mobbing, family issues, or people just being nosy about other people's lives. Popular culture. Notable YouTube videos. The Nightmare World of Gangstalking. The documentary maker Vice meets up with victims of gangstalking and those who think it is a delusion. Why are we stalking you? To keep you out of jail. A description of an outreach program. A police officer in the video says, once they grab onto you, they don't let go. The presenter jokes, we roam the streets. We call what we do relentless outreach. It is really stalking, but that is not legal. They are also running a pay-for-success contract with investors. Turning the Tide on Police Surveillance, discusses predictive policing, Stingray, ALPR, automatic license plate readers, and other technologies, the lack of knowledge and input from the general public on the use of these technologies, and the threat to civil rights and liberties. Also discusses how some communities are empowering themselves and turning the tide on these forms of surveillance. Movies. The Truman Show. Being gangstalked is often likened to being in The Truman Show. The difference being that a targeted individual will experience an interweaving of real and fake people, and the stalking and surveilling is ostensibly for the purpose of government surveillance rather than for entertainment. Songs. We're the Gangstalkers. Rusty Cage features the lyrics, "We're the Gangstalkers, buddy, and we're everywhere. When you see a gangstalker then you better beware. We follow you around in our bright red cars. We're all gangstalkers and we know where you are." Somebody's Watching Me, Rockwell featuring a sample from Michael Jackson. It features the lyrics, "I always feel like somebody's watching me and I have no privacy," alluding to the possibility of having cameras in the house. This is followed by "Are the neighbors watching me? Who's watching? Well, is the mailman watching me? Tell me, who's watching?"